I'm Ashley from Oliver Bernard. This evening, we've got Naveen online with us, who's going to take us through his experiences of continuous delivery using Cypress and Azure DevOps. Currently, he's over at ASOS as a lead QA, where he's driving everything across their continuous delivery aspect. He'll be able to obviously run through the details of that with you now, giving examples and some demos on that. He'll also be answering all of your questions via Slido. I'll drop the details of that in the chat function. They're on the screen now as well. But yeah, jump on there and ask any questions that you'd like him to answer. I'll pass over to him now.
Awesome. Thanks.
Away you go.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining. So as Ashley said, I work at ASOS as lead QA engineer, specifically for the customer care technology platform. And during my time at ASOS, I wore several hats, from a tester, React developer, test manager, from all the way to platform engineer. But however, my primary focus was on improving quality across the platform. And as you can see, I love reading books. Finished 15 books last year only, mainly non-fiction, like Accelerate, The Goal, Start With Why. And the one little book that I really enjoyed, and I recommend all of you who is looking to influence change in your organization, which is really important. The change mindset when you're trying to drive continuous delivery is Who Moved My Cheese? Check it out. So today I will be sharing my experience with Cypress and Azure DevOps pipeline, and how I used both of these tools to go from no test automation to fully automating our regression pack, which in turn helped me move a step closer towards achieving continuous delivery. So one thing I would like to share before moving on is Slido. So please either scan the code or type in the scan the barcode or type in the code, and feel free to ask a question there, and I'll try to answer as many as I can towards the end of the talk. So I'll leave it there for like 10 more seconds for everyone to scan. Awesome. So before we dive deep into my experience, challenges, and problems that I faced, I just want to talk about continuous delivery and continuous deployment. So there are lots of terms going around continuous delivery arena, like continuous integration, continuous delivery, deployment, CI/CD, and so forth. So just want to briefly highlight what is the key difference between continuous delivery and deployment. So obviously they're not equal. The part that are same in both of these practices are testing. Then you move on to staging, and here's the key difference comes in. So in continuous delivery, moving from staging to production is a manual step, and in continuous deployment, from staging to production is an automated step. So before we achieve continuous delivery, it's important to achieve continuous delivery, which helps us move towards continuous deployment, which is the ideal case. So here's something that I would like you guys to answer. So this is just to help me gauge all of your experience around Cypress, so that I can either deep dive or just touch upon Cypress. So I'm going to open the poll now, and we'll leave it open for a couple of minutes for you guys to answer. Here you go. Okay, almost 14 people replied out of 29 so far. All right, so from the looks of it, majority of the audience is basic or no experience, which is fine, as I'll be making all the code available via Git. Just literally plug and play. Great. Thank you all for participating in this poll. Now the question is how to stop this. Oh, there you go. The next one is what's your experience with Azure DevOps pipelines? Because that's what we will be talking about as well. I'm going to open up the poll. All right, so here as well, we got mainly no experience. So I will try to spend as much time as I can on different tasks, and we'll primarily be looking at Azure DevOps pipeline as code. So we'll be using YAML file to create our pipeline. Again, all the code will be available via Git, so you can literally just use it and play with it. Great. And keep your questions coming in if you have any. Let's get started. So one thing I also want to mention, there are some of my colleagues here as well from ASOS, or they used to work with me, or they are still. Everything that I'm going to share today was only been possible and achieved with an effort and contribution from several members of my team at ASOS. So this is not just my work, it's a team effort. So the first problem that we were facing was slow feedback. So lack of communication with the key stakeholder. For example, UAT wasn't done, so we weren't aware how user is experiencing it and whether or not whether we're delivering value to customer or not. And a lot of feedback loops were missing. So there's like I mentioned earlier, there was no test automation at all, no user testing. Exploratory testing was a foreign concept, and monitoring and logging wasn't involved. So all of these loops are essential if anybody wants to succeed at continuous delivery. The next one was the whole experience was full of friction. So there were a lot of redundant processes which shouldn't exist, and lack of CI standard practices. Basically, all the engineering practices were missing. And then all of those things contributed towards lack of confidence. So code was going out, software was going out, but we weren't sure, excuse me, whether or not it's doing what it should do. So any organization that is aiming to be successful at continuous delivery should have some checks in place for these problems and feedback loops. One thing I would say is a lot of people or teams put a lot of focus on being 100% in all of these areas, but you don't need to have high marks against each one of these, but you should feel fairly good about majority of these problems and feedback loops. So what were the challenges I faced? So once we identified the problem or documented the problem, the challenges that I faced were no source control. Now, to give you a little bit background on the type of project I was working on, so it was a customer So since I was working in customer care technology platform, we are using a customer portal framework. There are lots of companies out there, but Oracle is one of the most famous one that is used. With that, it comes with its own challenges around software development. So you cannot have a local development environment, and hence your code is not in source control. You cannot. It's a very limited framework, so you cannot add any files or folders or things like that. So adding a Git or version control was out of the option, uh, and hence multiple people cannot work in parallel, and that was delaying the whole process as well, and the experience wasn't very good. Source code files are only accessed via network drives or FTP, any kind of FTP protocol. Another challenge was because of all of these limitations, having no local dev environments and all these limitations, there was not unit testing because the packages or libraries required to sorry packages or libraries required to write the test could not be downloaded or installed on the framework. All of the front end testing was manual and time consuming and error prone. Rapid pace of change. So UI was changing frequently. Just to give you a sense of the rapid pace at ASOS customer care is we receive, so customer care receive millions of workflows every day, which they need to look at and to answer and to support all of these customer queries. They rely on the software that we supply to them, and that's the software which has got all these challenges. And at the time when we started looking into improving all of these things, there were only two members of team, which two members of two engineering resources, which is now grown to 15 or so engineers, which poses another challenges like they are stepping over each other because it's FTP protocol. One person make changes into file, another person is working on it. They kind of override each other's changes, and they cannot test it without actually uploading it back to the portal. And hence, as there were many regression or breaking changes that were found uh, after going live, and there were long running scenarios which were time consuming and really hard to validate. And all of these challenges contributed towards painful deployments. So low deployment frequency, we used to deploy once in 2-3 weeks, which wasn't good enough if the pace of change is really high. And that means low deployment frequency meant loss of hundreds of thousands of pounds in money, and long lead time. So how lead time is how long does it take to get from code commit to the production. So this whole experience was long because no unit testing, everything was done manually and things like that. So from the point of identifying problems and having code in Git, CI, CD, and pipeline, and working on reducing lead time, it took us around 8 months to work on all of these challenges. And this is where this is what the 8 month journey looked like. So before, our code was difficult to test. So poor code quality and hard to configure, customize test. So what we did around it is, because we cannot have source control, we had to write our own scripts and create a source control mechanism, a custom one, so that multiple people can work in parallel and can have some level of local development environment. And to do that, we had to spin up multiple instances of the same portal so that multiple people can work at the same time. and that helped improve the quality and reduce the lead time. And where we are now is improved testability. Devs and QAs are working closely to ensure code is built with testability in mind. So like I said, 2 to 3 weeks of delivery time, manual regression, longer feedback loops is down to less than a day of delivery time. And that's only taking a day because all of our regression test and the testing completes within few hours. Regression test takes about 30 minutes plus some UAT, and then change board approvals takes time. So all in all, we are down to single day delivery, which is quite impressive for 8 months time period. So before, no deployment ready builds, so code was going in, no testing, no nothing. So the code that was committed wasn't ready to be deployed. And now because of all of these testing and practices and version control and all of those things were implemented, we're able to deploy frequently and automatically. Uh, just want to highlight one thing when I say automatically, uh, automatically all the way to staging, but after that is a manual step to deploy to production. So again, devs weren't aware of breaking changes until the very end of the whole process, and only if the incidents are raised on in our service now, or a customer gets in touch regarding something's not working. So the whole feedback loop was longer, and now devs are more involved in QA, and we're catching all the regression faster and earlier. Ideally, so not ideal. Typically, we are catching regression within an hour or so of committing the code. And all of those helped us towards answering these kind of questions. So how long will it take to be done, which was difficult to answer before because of all of these unknowns. Or if we start now, when can we get it to production? Can we deliver this week or any time frame? And these are really important questions when you're trying to work towards achieving continuous delivery. So choosing a test library is a challenging task, especially with all the challenges that I mentioned. So after several investigation, POCs, and some intense discussion with colleagues, I decided to give Cypress a go. And that there are many reasons of using Cypress, which are extensively covered by many other speakers within this forum, like Giridhar and then I forgot the name of the other one. There are a couple of speakers who covered Cypress and why to use Cypress, how to use Cypress in detail. But I want to highlight some key reasons that helped me get engineers and management on board to our Cypress journey. The first one is reliability. So it's a tool that runs tools. It's a tool to reliably test anything that runs in web browser, then helps automate relentlessly. So literally, uh, your imagination is the limit with Cypress. So in my project, I've used it from all the way to writing unit tests, integration, end-to-end, visual testing, and all the different kind of testing. It's very frictionless. So if many of you got basic knowledge, so setting it up, writing the test, debugging, and finding problems, all of these are all of that process is very frictionless, which saves you a lot of time that you can focus on doing something more important. Again, easy to learn and shorter learning curve, that helps. That specific feature of Cypress helped me make case to management why we should introduce a new tool to the team. Again, closer to the browser. I don't think that requires any explanation. So Cypress runs test within the browser, which makes it faster and easy to debug, and all those beautiful features that you get from Cypress. And the most important one was free and open source. Uh, when there's a limit on budget, your manager will hesitate towards buying a paid software. With Cypress, we're getting all of these functionalities, and it's free and open source, unless you want to use their dashboards and some other services, which you probably won't need when you're getting started. It's an all-in-one solution, so you can simulate network call, debuggability, can be used for, like I mentioned previously, can be used for unit testing to all the way through to end-to-end testing as well. And the last one is greater developer experience. So it's time for demo. So before jumping into demo, I want to kind of give you guys an overview of what am I testing in the demo. So since I worked at ASOS, so what I will be testing is, so this demo is a very cut down and reduced version of what we have done in my team at ASOS. So I will be testing the customer care section of this website. And I'll be making sure, the test will be making sure that the FAQ topics, all of these 6 topics are correct, and the redirect link behind these are correct as well. Now, just to make it a little bit more interesting, ASOS serves in multiple countries. So one of the countries is France. For France, this is what French interface of ASOS.com looks like. If, as you can see, all of these things are translated into French, and if you click the redirect URL is different as well. So what I will show you in the demo is how I've used fixtures and config variables and Azure DevOps pipeline to achieve testing on both of those markets with one single test, and how you can customize or build Azure DevOps pipeline to run tests on both those interfaces in parallel. So in Cypress, I'll briefly touch over project structure because most of you are already aware of it. And then a little bit about fixtures and config variables. This was the interesting one. So there's a hierarchy level, or like in Cypress.json, if you got some config setup, then it will take priority over what's in Cypress.json or what's in environment variable on your machine. So on Azure DevOps, I'll be showing you a YAML pipeline, and there are a couple of ways of creating it. If you're feeling really lucky, you can create it by hand, one by one, or there's another way, which is easier way of doing it, which I'll also show you. Multiple pipelines. So I already created a CI pipeline and 2 pipelines for testing different markets, and how to set up environment variables and why they're important. Let's jump into it. So, come on. Here's my Visual Studio Code, as you can see. So on any root folder, if you do npm init, it will initialize npm for the project, for the folder. And then if you install Cypress, and then if you do Cypress run, Cypress will create all this folder structure for you. So what I got set up here is I have one folder for YAML pipeline. And in the Cypress folder, we got fixtures. That's where I'm storing my test data. Integration, that's where Cypress tests are. It supports all of the custom commands that are needed to support the test. I also enabled ESLint, which enforces some of the best practices for the code. There's a README file to get you started. Again, the link to the Git repo will be shared, so you can check it out later. So let's take a look at the test first. So in this test, what I'm doing is I'm testing that I'm setting Cypress to navigate to the help and contact page, which is this. That's the wrong one. Which is this one. And then I'm dynamically creating a test for each one of those topics. There are 6 topics. So 6 tests will be created using this, and I'll show you in Cypress Runner how they looks like. So basically what I'm doing is created a couple of files for different markets. So for France, it's in FR. For UK, it's under UK. And what's in it is a help and contact URL, which is different for each interface. Then these are the test cases. So these are each of those 6 topics, and then the respective URLs that it will be redirected to. And same for the UK. One thing I would like to show you is in cypress.environment.json file. So I got a variable config called market. So here I can set it to either, if I'm running tests locally, I can set it to France if I want to run it against French interface, or UK if I want to run it against UK interface. So I already ran Cypress. So this is what it looks like. That's the test runner. So if you click on it, so as you saw in the config, it's pointing to French interface. So all of these 6 tests are created dynamically from our test JSON file from fixture folder. So what that gives us is the maintainability and ease of adding new tests. For example, if a non-experienced, or if someone is new to Cypress, or if a developer wants to contribute in testing as well, all they need to do is just go into this file where you're defining your test cases and add more properties here. And this will dynamically generate all these tests. So while we're at it, let's take a look at running the same test against UK interface, which you can do by going to Cypress and simply changing it to UK. Save. All right, we got some problem. A demo is not a demo if it goes smoothly. Let me close these things down. All right, it's loading. Come on. There we go. Let's kick it off. So now if you pay attention to the URL here, it is going to .com, which is UK interface. And that was simply a config change. Exactly same test were run with different test data and different test cases. As you can see, is reflected in the test names as well. So now this was a scaled down version of what we have done in the team. but this can get you started, and you can utilize it as it is. Another thing I want to briefly mention is the scripts. So I'll always advise you to run a test in headless mode, especially when you're running in CI. That's it. Okay, let's take a look at our pipelines. So this is Azure DevOps for anyone who haven't seen before. Azure DevOps is basically a collection of services offered by Microsoft. So you can have boards, repositories, version control, pipelines, a test plan, and artifacts. So for this demo, I'll be showing you pipelines. A few pipelines I already created. So in the pipeline here, there's a CI build. What that does is it's as soon as you commit the change, it triggers it and make sure that there's no linting errors or anything like that. And in the beginning of demo, I promised you to show you the couple of ways of creating this YAML pipeline. So I designed this one specifically for demo to show you how to do it in the classic editor. So all I'm doing is I'm telling it use node version 10, then npm install, verify Cypress. And the way to generate YAML file with an ease is by clicking on this view YAML button here. So what this will do is it will translate all of your task into a YAML file, which you can then copy and store it in your code, which is here, YAML pipeline. So let me walk you through individual tasks here. So in this pipeline, I'm asking it to run the test on Windows 2019 VM image, and currently is triggered manually. And then this is a piece of PowerShell command that I put together to basically it will publish all the environment variables that are used by the test by the pipeline. This really helps when you're trying to investigate when something fails, and if you're trying to investigate and see if the correct variables were used or not. The next one is installing the correct version of Node, then installing the packages, verify Cypress, and then run the test. Once the tests are finished, what it does is it publishes all the screenshots of the failed test. So it only publishes screenshots if tests are failed. It publishes all the videos of the test execution, and then it publishes results. So this step is important if you want to see results within the Azure DevOps pipeline, and I'll show you what I mean. So if we go back to this was our CI pipeline. If we go back to our test pipeline, let's say the UK one, and this one I already ran. We click on that. This tab here, test. So that last task publishes the results in pipeline, and that's what you can see. Again, if you want to see the details of it, just by default, it only shows failed or aborted test results. There you go. You can view individual tests as well. So that's pretty much it from the demo point of view. Oh, I think I missed environment variables. So quickly, let's look at environment variables. So in Azure DevOps, you go to library, you can create variable groups. So I created a group for France and UK. So because this is just a demo, all we're doing is setting which market it is. But in real world scenario, you may want to set a lot of other parameters like different login details, different secrets and passwords and things like that, which is easy to do in variable groups. And also you can do it more securely by linking it to Azure keyword. Let's see if I missed anything. Nope. All right, I already kind of talked about running the Cypress test. So what was the outcome of all of that work? So we are now running nearly 1,600 tests daily, and it's growing as we talk. Run duration is roughly about 25 minutes. So just to put that in perspective, we used to do one regression, which was manual per 1 to 2 weeks, which is now down to 4 to 6 regressions per day. And all of our new features are 100% covered by these automated tests. And the features are developed with testability in mind, and is helping us catch regression early. So every time a developer makes a change, creates a pull request, as soon as PR is created, all of these test runs and provides feedback as soon as possible. So that feedback loop time is roughly around 25 minutes right now. Again, improved visibility and accountability. We got email, Slack, and Slack alerts set up. So it sends an email if somebody breaks something, and more focus on exploratory and UATs. So all of these improvements freed up a lot of time for both QAs and developers, so they can focus on exploratory testing, which is really important, and people generally miss doing exploratory testing. And yesterday, Callum done a really good talk around exploratory testing. If you want to listen into that, I think it's on YouTube channel somewhere. So what it looks like. So these are the real numbers from the project that I've been sharing experience from. So we have around 263 tests per interface. So in ASOS, we got 6 different interfaces. I gave you an example of 2 interfaces. So you got France, Germany, Spain, and so on. On each of those interfaces, that we have 263 tests. So if you times this by 6, nearly 1,578, 1,600 test-ish, and it takes less than 25 minutes. So thank you so much for listening, and I will switch to questions. All right, so the first one is, what is the name of the framework again, please? So now I'm not sure which framework you're mentioning to, but the framework that I mentioned was Customer Portal Framework from Oracle. What will you do if you have to do cross-browser testing in Cypress like Safari and IE11? So at the moment, with Cypress 4.0 release, it supports cross-browser testing. It supports cross-browser testing, but it doesn't support Safari and IE11, I believe. So for those things, I personally am not doing it right now because it's an internal software, and we know every one of our customer will be using Chrome. So we're not doing that. However, there are other teams which are using either Selenium, Grid, or Source Lab and tools like that to do cross-browser testing, and using WebDriver.io for that. So basically, you need to mix and match. So you need to use the good or the best functionality of each tools to fit for the purpose. Is Cypress better than Selenium? Well, it's definitely easy to use than Selenium, easy to set up, but there are certain things, certain features which are still missing from Cypress, but I think Cypress is catching up real quick. So it's up for you to decide which one is fit for purpose. So like for the from the previous questions, if you want to do cross-browser testing for Safari 11, you might want to look into Selenium. However, there are better tools available. Have you used Circle CI? No, I haven't used Circle CI. Can you use Cypress for API testing? Yes, definitely you can. Is there a free version of? Yes, that's a very good question. So all of this that I showed you is built on free version of Azure DevOps. And I would highly encourage everyone to just go and play with it. You get certain, like, I think about 60 minutes per month or something like that to run your test or pipeline, execute pipeline, and 2 GB storage to store your repository. You can create boards and stuff. You can have team members and things like that. So I would definitely encourage you to go and sign up for Azure DevOps. It's free. How do you provide test report for full Cypress regression run? So I briefly touched upon that. For the full report is published as part of the run. So in the demo, I only had one spec file, but if you have multiple spec file, you can publish the test results from each of those spec file here, and it will show you the combined result. Again, you can take a look into the code that I provided. It's all configured to generate the report. Can you run, let me check how much time we got. All right. Can you run tests in parallel or you have to run them sequentially? Can you handle multiple tabs? Well, I personally haven't handled multiple tabs, but I know some of the QA at ASUS who has done it. Run tests in parallel, yes. So because each of those, if you can see from here, so each of these run takes 263 tests takes 24 minutes and 22 seconds to run. So if you want to run it on 6 interfaces, that's about 3 hours to run everything. So what we've done is to run all of them in parallel. Hence, we're getting time down to 25 seconds for 1600 tests. So you can definitely parallelize the test. There are multiple ways of doing it. So I think, I'm not aware, I haven't used it, but Cypress has a parallelization feature within the test. So you can parallelize the test execution. If that's not something you're familiar with, then you can just run multiple pipelines in parallel. That will help you achieve the similar goal. Did you develop any API interface layer in your project, like abstracting the page and component for easy maintenance? No, I haven't. Sorry, that's the short answer. That's a really good question. How do you cache Cypress version? So I personally, the CI pipeline that I've shown, so as part of the CI build, at the end of it, it publishes the whole project as build artifact. And whenever test run, it downloads the artifact and run the test. This speeds up the test execution. Otherwise, if you're trying to do npm install on every execution, it takes it. I can show you. It takes about 5 minutes to install all the nodes, and especially Cypress takes really time to download and unzip. So npm install, it took 8 minutes here. But in my project, the real one, we're publishing it as artifacts and downloading and running the test. What was the length of time to build Cypress framework on CI/CD pipeline? Well, setting up, so I had a background of Azure and Azure DevOps. I had a couple of years of experience, so I was designing the framework, so it took me a week or so to put in basic structure in place. However, the whole process, whole experience that I talked about, from identifying the problem to all the way to achieving this continuous delivery, took us about 8 months. Can you run parallel across browser using Cypress to save time? I'm not sure about that one. You can definitely do it using Source Labs. Are you now using TDD for new development? And if so, Cypress being used? So yes, we are using TDD. However, we are not using Cypress for TDD. For this purpose, the project in discussion right now, again, cannot have unit tests. A lot of these tests that I mentioned here, a lot of these 263 tests, not all of them are end-to-end tests. It's a mixture of unit tests, integration tests, and end-to-end tests. However, for our new project, we are using Jest for unit testing and Cypress for the rest of the testings. Do the Cypress include authorization? Yes. So our test requires authorization authentication. Can I give further details? Yes, I can. If you want more detail, please reach out on LinkedIn or via my website. I'll be happy to help. Is Cypress used for integration with their product? Most definitely, yes. So one of the things that we're currently testing is testing Cypress in production, using Cypress tests to run in production or on production environment, which is basically is an integration environment. And in our pre-prod or staging environment, we're using Azure Function to stub some of the APIs. Can Cypress use an external file? Yes, it can use an external file such as CSV to pull data. Yes, definitely. Someone got in touch a couple of weeks ago, and I wrote an article about it as well on my website, so please check it out. However, if you want to pull data from XML file, you will need to install some other libraries, which I can give you the details of. Are developers increasingly writing automated test scripts instead of dedicated QA? So one of the things that we are, let me check the time. I'm not running out. Yeah. One of the things that we are promoting is creating a quality culture where there's no separation between QA and a developer. So QA is basically a developer with expertise in testing. Developer is so both are engineers, and yes, developers are writing automated tests. Like I said, the way the framework is designed, it's really easy to add more tests without having much of a framework knowledge. And hence I went down to this approach. And the last one, are developers increasingly writing? It was the same question. All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope you found it useful. Ashley, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that, Naveen. Yeah, excellent talk, and thanks for the demos as well. If anyone does have any further questions, like Naveen said, reach out to either of us on LinkedIn or Naveen via his website. Tonight's event has been recorded, so I'll share that with you all shortly when that's added to our YouTube channel. Also, we'll send out the slides and the links to everything that Naveen was referencing there. So you'll see his GitHub repositories and everything else via the slides that we send through. Also, if anyone else going forwards would like to speak at an event, or if there's any topics that you'd like to hear about, reach out to myself and I'd be happy to look at putting something together along those lines. Also, you know, we are a recruitment agency as well, so if anyone's finding themselves looking for some market information or just to have a chat around sort of general conditions given the current situation, feel free to reach out with me. My LinkedIn profile I'll send around to everybody. Feel free to call me or drop me an email, and I'll see you all at the next event. Thanks again, Naveen, and catch you all later.
Thank you, everyone.